Hello everyone, Scarlett here again. We're going to be continuing Tainted today, and we're doing chapter 7, which is called a life-changing moment. Okay, so let's just jump right in. After they agreed to unleash a new wave of fear into the world, Kevin decides that it's best for them to get rid of the goddess once and for all, freeing up that space for more deserving people. She is too damaged and won't be able to play for much longer anyway. Scott agrees that she is a loose end that needs to be taken care of and knows exactly how to do it in such a way that it will be that it will be like she was never there. If the house were ever searched for any reason, there would be nothing to find to tie them to her. Curious, Kevin is dying to watch him in action and tells him to grab whatever he needs in order to make this work smoothly. They don't need anything to cause them a headache in their first attempt to start a new life of passion and excitement. Scott leaves for about 30 minutes and returns with a wood chipper, which will make it easier to grind the body parts and in turn easier to dispose of them by dumping them into the sewers throughout the neighboring towns. Loving the idea, Kevin is eager to see if he will actually kill the goddess first or if he will use the wood chipper as an instrument of her death. Going off of what he knows of Scott, he believes that he would take her life first. They unhook the wood chipper from the back of his car and take it to the garage situated behind the house so they can have privacy and avoid any nosy neighbors seeing what they are doing in the backyard. Scott mentions to him that this is going to be a surefire way to get rid of victims going forward, and it should be their main go-to for body disposal. Kevin agrees, but knows that sometimes he will want to try different things, and he has read up on ways to kill and destroy evidence, and is dying to put some of them to the test in order to see if the information is true, or if those people are full of crap. Eager for another adventure, they head out to roam the streets looking for someone on who they can test out what they have learned. They decide that a bar is a good place to start their search. Kevin looks at the time and realizes that there is a bar that's open now, and even though it's early in the evening, there must be some poor soul there who will not see what is about to come his way. The surprise and shock of the victim makes it even more exciting to him because there is nothing more sinister than to destroy someone already weak and broken, as they are looking for mercy and compassion. But the only thing the poor bee will discover is a world full of hate, as he and Scott have both been betrayed and hurt by someone at one point or another. And that has allowed them to use their feelings to uncover something that was lying dormant within their souls. Scott thinks this is a great idea given that he thought they were only going to go after the goddess, but now understands that they have to work their way up to it. Because that one kill, torture, punishment, or justice meted out needs to be ideal for the crimes committed against the other men in the world. But in particular, for all the pain that Bella brought to Kevin, this is why now the most opportune time to get in as much practice as possible. So when the time comes, and it will come, there won't be any mistakes made, and they will all know what will be happening. The day of reckoning is upon them, and they will unleash a new demon, a new face, a new way of looking at the scariest things in our lives, and they will make it seem like it's the end of the world until we all give in and die. During the drive, Kevin continues to think of the things that he would like to do as Scott steers the car along the road with a smile on his face. He glances over at Kevin a few times, but there is no reaction from him. Scott is still smiling, listening to the music playing in his head from a show that he used to love as a child, when the idea comes to him that they will take the first person who talks to them for whatever reason and go from there. He knows that it will be up to him to execute the kidnapping given his background and security as well as other previous trainings that he doesn't like to talk about. People tend to look at him differently when they learn of his background, and he already attracts enough attention as it is with his personality. The thing about them is that they share this outgoing and charming personality, and while Scott doesn't mind talking to people to a certain point, that's not the case with Kevin. Kevin loves to be away from everyone And the one thing that he's managed to do is make an interesting friendship with Scott. Scott is laid back until you push certain buttons of his. And then it's like, holy crap, you better run, because if you don't, you're truly going to die where you stand. Kevin is more of the don't talk to me, don't interact with me, and just let me be type of person. But there's something about Kevin that makes people feel the need to come over and start a conversation with him or tell them their problems as if they have been friends for all of their lives. They come to a small dark bar called Angelica's that doesn't look like anything special, so they assume that whoever they take from there won't be missed by anyone but the other patrons and maybe the rats. Kevin looks over to Scott and asks, "Are you ready?" Scott looks at him with a hellish smile and replies, "Let's party like it's 1999, baby." Their excitement is through the roof, and Kevin looks like he's about to snap at anyone who comes at him the wrong way. But the reality is, he wants someone to come over so they can gain his or her trust, quietly steal them away, and then demonstrate things that he has discovered in the darkest place of his mind. Although Kevin's experiences have been terrible, he's never used them to gain any advantages in his life. Two things that he has been given are the hatred and ugliness of this world, because even though he has changed and become a better person than he once was, there appears to be something out to get him that lands him in these horrible situations. Yet today isn't one of those days, because today marks a new day, a rebirth, and an opportunity to finally correct some wrongs, and that's exactly what they plan on doing with this miracle that has fallen straight into their laps. Without concerns of the road ahead, this will mold them into legends to be feared and never seen, because if you see them, you will never be seen again. Stepping out of the car, they walk toward the bar when they see a drunk man taking a piss right smack in the middle of the parking lot. It really hits them that they are nowhere near a place with any class. Looking at the bar and its customers, it's crystal clear that they are in the middle of working class America. Scott is grinning from ear to ear because he knows that when he's drunk, he will talk to anyone just to have a good time. He's ready for the man to say something to him so they can whack him over his head and just take him back to the house. But nothing comes out of it. Scott even stared at the man, waiting for anything to be said, but even when it appeared that the man was going to say something, the only thing that came out of his mouth was a loud burp, followed by vomit being projected out of his mouth as if it were a missile. That's gross. Disappointed and disgusted, they continue toward the bar when they see that there is a bouncer at the door checking IDs. Naturally, in Scott's mind, he believes that this is it, and they will find a way to lure the big behemoth of a man into the parking lot, take him down, and have their fun with him. Kevin looks at himself and then at Scott, realizing that this might be a tough task to pull off if the man actually opens his mouth and says anything to them. It occurs to Scott that Kevin probably hasn't seen him smile this much the entire time that they've known each other. Not even when he found out that he was going to be a father and was this excited. He shows Kevin the goosebumps on his arms as he contemplates a way to make the bouncer talk, figuring that the easiest thing will be to say he has no driver's license. He decides to make it a little more interesting than that, but he doesn't know how to do it just yet. "Good evening, sir," Kevin says, as the bouncer points toward the sign without saying a word. "Of course, as you might tell, we don't belong around here, but we were told that this is the place to be," Kevin adds as he hands over his license. The bouncer is still silent as he waves them through. "Oh, you want my license?" Kevin asks as the man points to the sign. "You just let my friend through, and I clearly look older than him, so just let me through." The man looks at him and again points to the sign without saying a word while placing his hand on Scott's right shoulder. "Did you just put your hands on me?" Scott asks as the man rolls his eyes. "This is assault, and legally I have the right to defend myself, so unless you want to have a serious problem, I suggest you let me through," Scott adds, as the man stands up, towering over both of them. "Scott, calm down. I'm not okay with this. Be smart about this, and let's have a good time without any trouble, and let the big man do his job," Kevin says, dropping his wallet without realizing it. "Kev, this is not what I want to do. I want to have fun, but this a-hole Won't let me in without showing him my license. Let's just go because it's about the principal here. I'm older than you, and you got in. He's giving me crap. F him. Scott replies, and the man still doesn't say a word, just waves goodbye at him. Upset, they walk back to the car as Scott tries to convince Kevin that he had the bouncer on the verge of talking and that all he needed was a bit more time before he would have said something. Knowing that he might be right, Kevin looks at him and puts his arm around him, trying to comfort him because he knows that it was him who effed it up and not Scott. But just as they are about to get in the car, they hear someone walking behind them. Thinking that it's someone heading back to their car as well, they continue on to where they were parked, and suddenly a gravely voice breaks through the quiet. "Hey, Kevin, you dropped your wallet," the bouncer says. An even bigger smile takes over Scott's face as he feels that the man made it personal before, when it was all for fun. "Thanks, bro. Let me give you something because I can't thank you enough for everything you've just done for me. You have no idea how much time and aggravation you just saved me," Kevin replies, and Scott quickly comes up with a plan. "No worries, I don't need anything. Just doing my job and making sure that everyone is safe and all," the bouncer replies with a smile. "I can't accept that. Let me give you a little something because I truly do appreciate all the time you just saved me," Kevin says as the man rejects it once more. "Oh, crap, F, man. This happened on your watch, man. How the F does the tire get slashed when there's a bouncer at the door?" Scott asks. "What do you expect me to do, man?" the bouncer asks. "To at least look at my effing tire. This crap happened on your watch, and you can't act like nothing happened. At least look at the effing thing. F, man." Scott replies, annoyed, as the man approaches the front driver's side. The man bends over to look at the tire in the dark parking lot, and just as he turns his head to tell Scott that he's full of crap, Scott is there with the tire iron in hand, smashing him over the head with it. Confused, Kevin looks on as Scott manages to take the behemoth of a man and throw him in the back of the car, chaining him up just in case he was to wake up before they get back to the house. Smiling and having the time of his life, Scott continues to tie the man down with more chains as Kevin continues to look on, trying to make sense of what just happened. It's not like Scott is going to take him back to the house only to have a change of heart and let the man go out of the kindness of the hole where his heart is supposed to be. Kevin realizes that his fantasy is becoming a reality right in front of his face, but wants to be sure that they can actually do this because he cannot imagine intentionally hurting someone for real, despite the countless times he has fantasized about it. And even though there had been some torture and stuff in the past, it wasn't premeditated, at least on Kevin's part. This is taking things to a new level with which Scott apparently has no issues with. But Kevin seems to be struggling with the notion that this is going to be his life going forward, and that is something that needs to be left at the door if they're going to proceed with this new lifestyle. And Scott is determined to help him get over any misgivings that he might have about the choices he has recently made because he isn't willing to go to prison for anyone. Oh, gotta move. Okay. With a behemoth secured in the back seat, Scott jumps into the driver's seat and takes off slowly in order to not draw any attention to the fact that they just assaulted and kidnapped one of the bar's employees. Kevin looks at the unconscious man, torn between setting him free or killing him instantly in order to spare him the horrors that await him back at the house. Once they get there, there's nothing at the house that will be able to save him, and no one will hear him scream either. Kevin is acting so weird that it's throwing Scott off. He freaked out for a split second when he saw a police officer pull up next to them and take a glance at the car. But the officer didn't even look at the back seat and only glanced at Scott for less than a second. But in Kevin's mind, they were about to get caught and go to jail. Upon arriving at the house, the man wakes up, confused, not knowing where he is. He notices that one of the men, he doesn't remember his name, is silently looking at him through the rearview mirror while he just tries to make sense of what happened and thinks that there has to be a way out. There's always a way out. Kevin looks over at the man and tries hard not to laugh at him because there's something that's coming his way that has them excited to see the expression on his face once the moment is finally upon him. Beyond thrilled and silent for the first time since meeting the man, Scott gets out of the car and opens the door to the back seat. The man looks desperately towards Kevin, for protection, and he just shrugs it off because this is Scott's game now, and he's only there to watch and learn the way things need to be handled going forward. This is the only way to ensure that no one can cause them any real harm and allow them to grow and move forward. You will never get away with this. This is effing kidnapping and murder, and sooner or later you both will pay. The man yells at Scott, looks on silently, a smile on his lips. You better pray that I don't get free because I'll kill you without hesitation. As the man continues bellowing threats and obscenities, Scott just smiles and looks down at the erection tinting his pants. Oh dear, it appears you have made my friend a little excited. I think it might be best to give you two some alone time. That way you can explore each other and get to know one another the way two consenting adults do. Kevin replies with a smirk. What the F are you talking about? The man asks, and Scott gets closer to him. Wait, what the F are you doing? Scott drags the struggling man halfway out the car and flips him onto his stomach. I'm sure you know that in order to truly break someone's spirit, first you need to get into their head, break them mentally. Well, that's what's about to happen here, Kevin replies as Scott pulls the man's pants down. No, you can't allow this to happen, the man shrieks at Kevin as he walks away, while Scott licks his lips. Scott leans in to the man's left ear as he places his hand inside his mouth and pulls it out full of saliva. He then rubs some on the man's cheek, and the remaining he uses as lube for his enraged cock. Teasing him, Scott spanks him from side to side before poking his ass crack with his cock. He isn't looking to penetrate him, at least not yet. It's the fear of what could happen that excites Scott more than anything else. The man believes that Scott is about to really hurt him in a number of ways, but the thing that scares him the most is that he will lose his butt to a freak who will show no mercy and then kill him anyway. Death might be welcomed, though, in the event that he enjoys himself when the time comes. He recalls that there was a time back when he was in school that a friend of his wanted to experiment and he refused. Not because he wasn't curious, because he was, but because his friend was very handsome and neither of them had tried anything like that before, and he didn't want to get attached to him and only to be rejected in the event that he developed hard feelings for him. The man cries, begging for mercy and forgiveness for the way that he came across early in the night, but his pleas are met by nothing but silence. Scott's only answer being to grab his butt cheeks and spank them once more. The man tries to say something else, but the fear is flowing over him just when a volcano erupts and the lava takes over a town. Just as the man tries to think of what to say, the only thing that escapes his mouth is a loud yell as Scott is now biting his butt and is pulling back to the point that he manages to rip out some of the flesh, leaving an open wound. Scott spits the chunk of flesh into his hand and walks toward the other side of the car so he can look the man in his eyes as the fear continues to overtake him. It's sinking in that there are no limits when it comes to the horror that being in this house brings. He realizes that this was their plan all along. This was going to be the outcome of this night, if not that of someone else inside the bar. Knowing that it was him and not one of the unfortunate souls from the bar brings a bit of peace to him because he knows that he can handle anything these two psychos can come up with better than any of those sad drunks. Scott stops by the door for a second as he looks down at the man with blood dripping out of his mouth and staining his beard. Every time that the man will look down, Scott would tap on the window in order to make him look up at his blood-covered face, which causes him to look away in horror. The man turns away again, and Scott decides to open the door and rub the piece of flesh against his face. The moment the man screams, a piece of flesh is shoved into his mouth, and he begins to cry. The man continues crying as Scott closes the door and heads back to the other side of the car. He looks at the wound and is tempted to create its twin on the other butt cheek, but he fights the urge to do so. Instead, he spits onto the man's butthole and then shoves two of his fingers into the man and begins to stretch the hole by spreading his fingers in a scissor-like motion. He screams. The screams ring through the night and are loud enough that Kevin can hear them from inside the house. The man struggles as he tries to dislodge Scott's fingers, but there is nothing that he can do that will keep Scott from trying to punish and torment him before he finally gets what he's been looking for the entire time. Not knowing how to avoid the inevitable, the man braces himself for something unexpected and knows that he probably won't be able to fight it off, whatever it is. Scott hasn't even said a word to him since they got to the house and has been punishing him and smiling the entire time. Scott continues to stretch out his hole and spits into it, spanking him. The torment of not knowing what Scott has on his mind is causing extreme levels of fear and panic. One thing remains clear, even though the fear-induced fog in his mind, that after today he will never be the same, and there's a strong possibility that once the day is over, so is his life, and in the best case scenario, his life as he knows it would be over, but he'd still be alive, which would give him hope that one day he might be able to escape and heal from this horrific experience, though the chances of that are slim. Scott leans into the man's ear once more while continuing to finger F the hell out of his butt. He reminds him that it's only a matter of time before there's something else inside of him, and that when that happens, that's when it will be all over for him, and he's never going to be able to leave or love anything else ever again. Accepting his fate, the man knows there is no chance of him fighting. Not even his size and all of his muscles are going to be enough to save him from whatever the hell is coming his way. Scott is a man who will be able to dominate him. Unlike anyone else, he will break him. Scott looks at the man's profile and notices that he has pretty much given up. He knows that the only thing that will cause the man to fight again will be to do something that he teased about but hadn't planned on doing. Now it appears that it will be the one thing that will force the man to fight once more. Scott relishes in the struggle. It's what makes him feel alive. Scott pulls his fingers from the man's butt and grabs him by the hips, and then he begins to thrust his cock into the man's butt. The screams being unleashed from the man are becoming too intense for anyone to handle, but the more the man screams, the more the excitement inside of Scott grows. With each scream, Scott plows in harder and harder, causing the man to scream more. The man's biggest fear is coming true, and there is a piece of him that is enjoying what is happening, even though he doesn't want to ever experience it on a regular basis. Scott knows that he's got the man right where he wants him now, as he's no longer fighting. The thrusting and has even let out a moan or two. This isn't really about the sex to Scott. It's all about the torture and having fun. He doesn't care if the man isn't enjoying himself as long as he himself is entertained. Nothing else means a effing thing except that the world knows and fears them. And this man is the first step in the process. The moment that Scott feels he's about to finish, he pulls out of the man and rushes over to the other side of the car as he continues to beat his meat right in front of the man, throwing his load right into the man's face. Disgusted, the man pulls back. Being bound in the chains, he's not about to move far enough, so he's still got the entire load all over his face and a bit in his eye. Deep down, the man enjoyed it, though, as it was something that he always wanted to experience as a teen, but he never felt comfortable enough to try it. It took getting raped to fulfill something that he had on his bucket list. Even though this isn't the way he imagined it, it was still worth it for him. He knows that it meant nothing to Scott, but in his mind, it will be special despite the disgusting nature in which it occurred. Scott walks back. Oh my God, I can't. Scott walks to the back of the car, adjusting himself and tucking his cock back into his pants. Then he opens the trunk off of the car, where he pulls out a baseball bat. Closing the trunk, Scott makes his way into the driver's side of the car to stare at the man's ass once more before brutally shoving the bat inside of him, causing the loudest, longest scream yet to rip between his lips. And the moment that he arches his neck and back, Scott grabs him by the hair and slits his throat. Scott rushes over to the other side of the car so he can watch as the light dims in the man's eyes. The joy and excitement that comes with witnessing the end of a life taken by his own hands has given him another erection, tempting him to pull it out and F him as the life quickly drains from his body. He holds himself back, though, knowing that he will be able to continue his fun once the man is dead. If he were to attack it now, the blood would splatter everywhere, and there would be more to clean up than if it were to just end the way it is now, with it just spilling onto the car seats and mats, where there is nothing more satisfying to Scott. There is nothing more satisfying to Scott than watching this man die after having an intense F session. Despite the man's butt being nice and tight, it just didn't feel quite right. Otherwise, he would have kept the man alive a lot longer. But deciding it wasn't going anywhere, there was no point in doing so. Now he has to go back on the hunt to find someone for Kevin to kill, but he can do so with a clear and focused mind since he released all the toxins from deep within. Okay, that's the end. Next one that we'll be continuing with is chapter 8, What I Know. So next time, that's where we'll start. So this is the end. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for me. That'd be great. And if you would like to discuss with me my reactions or whatever you would like to discuss with me about the book, feel free to do so in the comments. That would be awesome as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.